Hey guys, what's up? This is Frank from MTG Unlimited, and today I have some more con spoilers for you guys. So, as of now, there's been 162 cards spoiled out of the 269 in the cons of Tarkir set, and most of the set is spoiled, and it's looking very good so far. I'm really excited. I'll just talk about the cards on the top of the screen real quick. These are all the clan leaders, and on the left, starting is Anafenza the Foremost. That is the Abzin or Abzan, I'm not totally sure how to say that. It's that clan. It's junk colors, and I think it's actually very interesting. She's currently valued at like $10 or $11, so pretty valuable, and just kind of really emphasizes getting +1/+1 counters on your creatures, and has great synergy with a lot of other cards in the set that I will talk about. And I think it's very interesting, and I'm very interested to see where she goes. I know there's already a junk deck in Standard that is very good, so I think there's a lot of potential there. However, Narset in the Jeskai clan, I feel like it's not a ton of potential there. As a 6 mana creature, it's already very high, and her ability isn't super great on its own, so I mean, there's not a ton there that I think could impact Standard or any other format even. Maybe somewhat in Limited. But up next is Sidsi. This is the Sultai clan leader. This card I think is somewhat interesting. I feel like it could have been better. There are some interesting things about it, like how you get to automatically put top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and obviously the colors here, black, green, and blue, bug, is kind of focused on the graveyard and returning things from the graveyard to the battlefield, scavenging, things like that. So I think there's potential there. However, her ability to put out zombies isn't that great, and it won't make a ton of difference in Standard. And then up next is Zergo Helm Smasher. Now, I personally am very excited for him. Like, a 5-drop 7/2 haste that is indestructible on your turn and gets +1/+1 counters for killing creatures is just ridiculous. Like, this guy is insane. I really like him. He's only a few bucks, actually, and I think he's definitely worth a lot more than that. And I kind of want to make a Mardu deck just because he's so powerful, and I feel like he can make quite a big difference in Standard, and I'm really looking forward to playing him in decks. He has a lot of synergy with things like Ankle Shanker, Mardu Ascendancy, things that I'll talk about here in a little bit. I really like him. And then the most recently spoiled is the Temur, I'm not totally sure how to say that, Khan leader or clan leader, sorry. Now, 5-drop 6/6 flash can't be countered. Also, again, very good. I think he's actually very good as a commander too, because he ensures that your creatures are played and they're not countered, and he gives all your creatures trample, which is pretty crazy. Like, I think that he can definitely have a big impact on Standard and can be a commander as well. And then up next, I'd like to talk about all the ascendancies that have been spoiled. The Abzan ascendancy I mentioned when I was talking about Anafenza. Very interesting. When it enters battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. And whenever a non-creature token or non-token creature you control dies, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Some synergy there. However, I wish there were some more abilities that it had that could impact Standard. I think it's fairly interesting. However, I don't think it'll be played very much. The Jeskai Ascendancy, not super great. I mean, America is obviously focused on playing a lot of non-creature spells. However, there's not a lot of potential there, so I won't really talk about it that much. Sultai Ascendancy, I like this card actually a lot. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest back on top of your library in any order. So not only do you get to reorder the top cards of your library, but you also get to put certain cards into your graveyard that you need there. For example, like I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but any card that has like scavenge or just anything that you want to return later, anything like that. Which I think there's a lot of potential there for Bug. And then the Mardu Ascendancy just kind of helps you get out 1/1 goblins, and you can sack it to give all your creatures +0/+3 until end of turn. Really helps against things like Bile Blight, Mizium Mortars, Lightning Strike, everything like that. Although Mizium Mortars won't be in Standard anymore at the time, but it does help for things like that. And then I really like the Temur Ascendancy. Creatures you control have haste. Already pretty crazy. Turn 3. The Tamir clan plays a lot of giant creatures. So I think that'll be really powerful, especially in limited. And then whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Again, this helps this deck a lot because later in the game, after you play all your creatures, I feel like this deck would be running out of gas and running out of things to play. And against like a control matchup, you really need to have that card advantage because your opponent is going to be drawing a lot more cards than you. So this also helps not only giving your creatures haste and packing in that extra damage, but also just letting you draw more cards, get more gas, and let you play more stuff. And I think that's a very interesting card, especially in limited. And then up next, I have all the charms for you guys. I'll start with the Obzin charm. Choose one, exile target creature with power 3 or greater. You can draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, or distribute 2+1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. The last ability has a lot of synergy with the deck, as I've talked about with the Ascendancy and the Clan Leader. Just getting +1/+1 counters on your creatures. However, the second ability to draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, again, just helps you to draw more cards, like I was talking about with the Tamir Ascendancy, that you will need and will help you gain an advantage on your opponent. And then you can also exile target creature with power 3 or greater, which, seeing all the creatures that are in Khans of Tarkir, I think there will be a lot of those, especially also knowing what's already in Standard in Theros. I think there will be a lot of creatures with power 3 or greater, and exiling it just permanently is just absolutely fantastic. I really like this charm. And then I'll talk about the Jeskai charm. Choose one, put target creature on top of its owner's library. Essentially an Azorius charm, which is rotating. So, in light of that, I think it's interesting. However, it is 1 extra mana, but I still really like that ability. Jeskai charm deals 4 damage to target opponent. Again, also very powerful, 4 damage. Just like a Mizium Mortars, pretty much, except to your opponent. And that's very powerful. And then creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain lifelink until end of turn. Again, a pretty good ability. Lifelink, I really like personally. Just allows you to gain tons of life and make it so that you're way out of striking distance for your opponent and makes it so much harder for them to win. I really like that charm as well. Next is the Sultai charm. Choose one, destroy target monocolored creature, destroy target artifact or enchantment, or draw 2 cards and discard a card. So pretty much, I like the last ability because you get to draw 2 cards, but you also have to discard a card. However, for this deck, Sultai, this clan, I feel like it's, as I've talked about, it's not really a problem to be discarding cards or putting cards from the top of your library into your graveyard because, like I've said before, this deck functions on cards being in your graveyard, and there's a lot of cards that have like power and toughness equal to the cards in your graveyard or something along those lines, and I think that's very good. It also has a lot of versatility with the destroying a monocolored creature, destroying an artifact, or an enchantment. So there's a lot of options there. And you have to remember that there's a lot of enchantment creatures in Standard, like Courser of Krufix, and that helps take care of them a lot. Next is the Mardu Charm. Choose one, Mardu Charm deals 4 damage to target creature, Mizium Mortars. Put 2 1/1 white warrior creature tokens. Let me just combine both of those words into one word. Warrior creature tokens onto the battlefield. They gain first strike until end of turn. God, I can't speak. Sorry about that. And target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards that card. Wow, what a mouthful. I don't know what's happening. Sorry about that, guys. But anyway, I feel like this charm, again, very versatile. There's a lot of options. You can either get 2 1/1 first strikes onto the battlefield. That's pretty good on its own. Or you can deal 4 damage to target creature. Very powerful. Takes out a lot of things in the format. And target opponent reveals his or her hand. It's basically like a duress, and that's also very powerful. There's a lot of great options with this charm, and I really like it, and I want to see where it goes in that deck. So, up next is the Tamir charm. You can choose one, target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control, counter target spell unless its controller pays 3, or creatures with power 3 or less can't block this turn. So this kind of just removes chump blockers, like no more just blocking with my Elvish Mystic or Sylvan Caryatid or whatever. All this damage is going through. Very powerful. Or you get the removal with having your creature fight target creature you don't control, because most of the time your creatures are going to be more powerful. And also you get to counterspell, and typically your opponent's not going to want to pay 3 mana because that is ridiculous, and half the time they won't even be able to. So that is also a very powerful option that I really like. And up next, I have a few rare creatures that I want to talk about. And I really like all of these creatures, actually. Ivory Tusk Fortress, 5 mana, 5/7, already pretty ridiculous. Untap each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it during each other player's untap step. So, this deck, like I've said, junk deck, that could emerge in Standard, or even just in Limited, will focus on putting +1/+1 counters on your creatures, so almost all your creatures will have +1/+1 counters on them. In addition to just having a 5/7 blocker, you get to untap all of those creatures at each other player's untap step, so you can swing and not have to worry about being able to block it all, because those creatures will always be there. It's a great card overall. I really like it. Next is Sage of the Inward Eye. 5 mana, 3/4 flyer. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. I really like this card as well. I think it could be more powerful. However, I think it is kind of an interesting card. We'll see where it goes. I think it'll be pretty good and limited. Now, up next is Rakshasa Vizier. When 5 mana, 4/4. Whenever one or more cards are put into exile from your graveyard, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Very powerful, especially in this deck. You're going to be exiling lots of cards from your graveyard with certain abilities, and I think he can get absolutely huge, and your opponent's going to have to deal with him. Otherwise, it'll just absolutely be insane. Great card overall. Up next is Ankle Shanker. I love this card. 5 mana, 2/2 haste. Whenever it attacks, creatures you control gain first strike and death touch until end of turn. First of all, wait, what? I mean, first strike and death touch is like absolutely crazy. I mean, think about it. You're swinging. He comes out swinging on the turn he's played. So your opponent's gonna have to have mana open. Otherwise, they're taking all their creatures are dying, or they're taking tons of damage, because first strike death touch means their creatures automatically die if they block. So you don't really have to worry about attacking anymore, because your creatures are automatically going to win that fight. And he just really makes it so your opponents have to have a response to him instant speed, because they're going to lose so much life if they don't, and they're going to really suffer from it. Great card overall. I would love to play him in a Mardu deck if that deck emerges in Standard. Up next is a 5 mana 6/4 Avalanche Tusker. When Avalanche Tusker attacks, target creature defending player controls blocks it this combat if able. Kind of an interesting card. I feel like they should have made it like I don't know, maybe a 5/5, because a 6/4 makes it so it's kind of worrisome about it dying. Like, it's definitely possible that it could die, and I mean, yeah, you get to remove some of their smaller creatures, but it's, I don't know. For me personally, I'm not a huge fan of this card. It's interesting, but I don't know. I'll see where it goes. And up next, as I'm sure most of you have seen by now, are the Onslaught fetches that have been reprinted in cons. This is huge for Standard, Modern, everything. Not only is there a ton of potential for Standard, it really helps with mana fixing, especially after the Shocklands have rotated. However, the going along with the wedges, only one of these fits in each color of the wedge, so that's kind of the downside of it. But, however, this is just huge for Magic overall, because now all 10 fetches are in Modern, and this changes everything. Shocklands from Zendikar and Onslaught are all plummeting in price, making them a ton more affordable for just everyday Magic players, and it also just greatly aids with certain decks for mana fixing in Modern, and I'm really looking forward to being able to play Onslaught fetches in my Modern decks, and I'm really happy that they finally did this. The prices of fetches was just so far, so far above what Wizards thought it would be, and it was just so inflated that they had to do something about it, and I think this was a great option. It also has a lot of potential for Standard as well. There's a lot of synergy here with like Courser of Kruphix, because if you don't like the top card of your library, you can just fetch it away and see what you get. And I think there's a lot of potential there with Courser of Kruphix, and I can't wait to see what happens with that. And up next, I have just kind of an interesting card that I was just scrolling through the spoilers and I saw this card. I think it's very interesting, especially for like things like Commander and more casual. But it's a 4 mana, 5/4 flying. Sacrifice another creature, Butcher the Horde gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Haste until end of turn. So pretty much he's a 4/4, or I mean a 5/4 flying haste. Like, already coming down, you have a 5/4 flyer, which is pretty ridiculous for 4 mana. And in addition to that, you can choose to give him Vigilance and Lifelink. And it's crazy. I think for Standard, there's a lot of potential there. There's also a ton of potential for Commander and casual decks. And I think he's a very interesting card. He's got a lot of kind of synergy with like token decks and things that make a lot of cheap creatures that you can afford to sacrifice. And I think it's interesting, and I want to see where he goes as well. And up next, you can see another creature that was spoiled, Wingmate Rock, a 5 mana 3/4 flyer. It's a bird, and it has raid, so when it enters the battlefield, if you attacked with a creature this turn, put a 3/4 white bird creature token with flying onto the battlefield, and whenever it attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking creature. This card is insane for Standard, and not only is it a 3/4 flyer, it lets you put down a bird when it enters the battlefield if you play its second main phase, which you pretty much always will. But you also get to gain a ton of life, because I feel like the decks that are playing this are like token decks or just very aggressive decks that get out a ton of creatures that are attacking. And the potential there is just huge. You can gain tons of life with this. And I love this card overall, and I think it fits in a lot of decks. Up next is the Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker that I'm pretty sure all of you have seen by now. Great card overall, fantastic planeswalker. 5 mana, enters with 4 loyalty counters, and he pretty much, the turn he comes in, becomes a 4/4 haste flying indestructible dragon, which absolutely ridiculous for Standard. There's That's crazy. It's basically another Stormbreath dragon, but he's a planeswalker, so he can't die. And he is -3. It deals 4 damage to target creature, so pretty much just a Mizium Mortars. Pretty good. Just some nice spot removal. And then his ultimate is also very interesting. You get an emblem with at the beginning of your draw step, draw 2 additional cards, and at the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. So I feel like the deck that's playing this is a very aggressive deck that is playing a lot of creatures and is mainly just playing a lot of things per turn, and this doesn't really stop that from happening, and you're going to have a ton of mana by the time you get his ultimate out, so this won't really be a problem discarding your hand, and you just get to draw more cards. Very interesting planeswalker, and I can't wait to see where he goes in Standard. And then up next I have Utter End. It's just another removal spell that was released. 4 mana, exile target non-land permanent. So obviously this takes out everything in the format, including planeswalkers. Pretty powerful. However, it is 4 mana, so it is a lot. But I think it will fit in quite a few decks that I think it's pretty powerful on its own. And I kind of interested to see where it goes. It's about a $5 card, and that seems about right for me. Up next is Sorin Solemn Visitor. 4 mana, enters with 4 loyalty counters again, and until your next turn, creatures you control get +1, +0, and lifelink. Pretty powerful, lets you gain a lot of life and make your creatures bigger. His -2 puts out a vampire, pretty solid. And then his ultimate is at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. That's very powerful in Standard and Commander, and just kind of limits their creature base, and I think that's interesting. So, thanks for watching. If you could please like or subscribe below. Thanks so much, guys.